welcome to Talk Truly, podcast by Truly Effortless Events. Our goal with this podcast is to take everyday people that are working our community, and get you to talk to them, learn from them, learn a little bit more about them, and promote local business. Today, we have Mr. Corey Ballou with Real Broker. He is local in Chattanooga, but you know what? The knowledge is going to go nationwide. Ladies and gentlemen, Corey Ballou. How are you today, Corey?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks so much for having me, Ed. And so a little about me and where I started, but I'm from Missouri. I've been in Tennessee.
Show me state.
Show me state. Yeah, we're show me the facts, get the details. So my wife and I, we went to University of Missouri in Columbia. I studied engineering. I actually changed my major a couple times. Psychology, engineering, mathematics, and I ended up getting an interdisciplinary degree. I did another year of mechanical engineering in Tennessee and decided that wasn't for me. But, in real estate, I always had an interest of buying a rental property while I was in college and renting out. Instead, we did rent from my uncle's house, and had some roommates. So we did that. It's kind of called rent hacking. A lot of college kids do that. But I did have the desire to buy property, get in real estate. And when my wife and I moved here, we kind of just got customer service jobs, hotel, hospitality type things. But I also did a proposal. I was like, there's a lot of these buildings downtown that need remodeled. And there was one I did a proposal for the Parkway Tower. I actually got on the news because I was trying to get like engineers and architects together. I was like, guys, this is a historic building. We should do something about it. But of course, I was right out of college, didn't have the capital or the experience to do that kind of thing. But and I also sustainable design and energy efficient design was important to me or interesting to me, as well as in the investing world in real estate. So I've always from the time I got my license, I started working with another agent doing marketing, but real estate investing in commercial real estate and energy efficient buildings are things that are really interesting to me. So I started that back in 2015 is when I got my license. It's been 10 years, but it was back in 2014 when I made this proposal for like a $5 or $10 million redevelopment.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old were you?
So that was in 2014. So we'll do some math there, but so I was right out of college. And that was 11 years ago. So I was about 25 at the time.
Wow, that's some big steps for a 25-year-old.
Yeah, at least, make some proposals. I did some, from engineering, I did some CAD drawings and stuff before. So I did like a CAD rendering on SketchUp, had a nice display of what it could look like. And anyway, I tried to get some, capital raisers together. I made some great contacts with architects and engineers and builders and
at 25.
Things like that. Yeah.
Man, I'm telling you, this is something I didn't know about you. To be honest with you, Corey, I'm kind of like, tell me more, because I'm sure we're going to have some listeners that are out there going like, what should I do with my life?
Right.
And here you are at 25.
Yeah. And it didn't, it didn't lead to anything at the time, but I got a lot of great conversations started, and I think now there's supposed to be a development in progress for the building now, but that was actually really interesting history. I like learning about different things, but that building was part of the Tennessee Electric Power Company, the same builders that built the Incline Railway and did the Halesbar Dam, on the first dam on the Tennessee River. And that building's been sitting vacant since about 1933. It was built in like 1918, something like that.
Oh, wow.
So anyway.
And you're in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But whenever we went to the market, I was just like, hey, what's up with the building there? And, researched about it. And I was like, hey, here's, I think that it should be redeveloped and remodeled and stuff like that. But I think it gave me some peace of mind or experience of like how much there needs to learn to do development or building and things like that. So it kind of encouraged me to go on the path of becoming a real estate agent. And I also did marketing for another real estate agent. And I got my license, and I started off working primarily with buyers, home buyers. And actually, my wife and I closed on our first house the day I actually got licensed. So
Oh, did
yeah.
you sell it to you?
I
You
did
can't
not.
sell it to yourself.
I did not.
can you?
I was hoping to get my license a little bit early. We had delays that year in 2015 with some snow and things that year where the testing location was closed. So I got my license the same day I was closed on the house, but I was trying to get my license first. So anyway, that was and we've been full time in real estate since then. My wife was a reservations manager at Marriott. She was able to leave her job 1 year afterwards, and we had our daughter. So we've been able to kind of live full time in real estate and be flexible around our daughter's schedule and things like that. She's 8 years old now. That's another big driver for why we do everything we do to keep working hard.
Well, I've noticed this, and I've met multiple realtors in my life, and the majority of them, you hear of them. Well, I took this job so I could have more time with my kids,
Right.
and I could dictate my own schedule. Is that some of the perks of being a real estate
It depends.
agent? It all depends.
It depends. So it's whenever you work for yourself, as you know,
Yeah.
sometimes you're willing to work 80 hours for yourself instead of 40 hours for someone else. But at the same time, you can take off when you need to. And I think that's a really important flexibility of saying, I need to block out this day because my daughter's got a school event. She plays violin. She does some, we pick her and drop her out from private school. And there's some of those things, if I had a salaried, corporate job, it might not be as easy to do. So I think that's a really important part of having flexibility of at least deciding how much you want to work in real estate. You do have to be very self-motivating and stuff too. I found that there's a big turnover for how many people get in real estate, decide, they're not really staying consistent. They might be getting out of real estate in the first
So
few years.
what's the key element of going from someone who, hey, I sold my cousin, my brother, my sister, everybody else, to that person, that hunter and a gatherer,
Right. Yeah. I think the big thing is sometimes the slow and steady wins the race kind of thing, is that people have to be consistent. And I think that's where I've seen a lot of people that they might be initially discouraged after they made 100 calls. And I had one client or one teammate at the time that he made like 20 or 30 calls, got discouraged, and he took a break from real estate. He eventually got back into it, doing video production stuff, and building a real estate career that way. But it does take a lot of patience for people too. We've had clients that have, from the time we initially met to the time we bought a house was like 3 years, and sometimes that happens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they bought like a $700,000 house with us, but it was it takes building relationships a lot in real estate. It's not if you have a door-to-door sales for a low price item, sometimes people are willing to buy on the spot. For buying or selling a house, it's got to be the right time of life for somebody. But it's really important to be knowledgeable, be patient. But if they're ready to go, we also have to be kind of right away ready to go when they're on their timetable. So if they're needing to sell their house today, let's get it ready and get it on the market. It's usually best to prepare a little bit on that. But I think the big thing is consistency, hard work and consistency. I kind of tell a lot of people, I'm like, I don't really have a day off, but what I do often is like weekends, I block off some mornings, available for family. And doesn't mean I'm working all the time, but I'm kind of on call all the time. And I think that's the way, if you're running your own business, you do have to kind of be willing to be on call or available. And for clients too, it's their biggest purchase or biggest asset they're selling. So we have to be really available to, answer questions and be a guide, and help them with that process.
Well, that goes a long way. I mean, the fact that you said you have to be there for them, because if I'm selling a big price item,
Yeah.
and I'm calling my agent and I'm going like, why are you not returning my calls? I go into panic, and
Yeah.
I can imagine
Sure.
that you're the guy that can. Well,
Yeah.
we've seen this before. We got it. We could just take care of it right now.
Right.
Now, like, if I want to ask you,
Yeah.
if I was selling a home,
Mhm.
what would be the first advice you would tell me?
So it really depends on the house, but usually when we're going to look at that, if there's any cosmetic updates or maintenance updates that we need to do to the house to make sure it's going to be ready to put it on the market, if everything's in good shape, Sometimes there's going to be either staging or decluttering, things like that. But if we're ready to go, if all the house looks great, one thing we're going to do is really study the market for that area and see what pricing makes sense, because we kind of tell some people, like, you have your tax assessed value, you have your insurance rebuilt value, you have the plus or minus 20% on a Zestimate value. And really what a buyer is willing to pay is different than all of those values. It really depends what the market value is today. It's just kind of like the stock market. It can kind of go up and down with real estate, but overall it's going to go up over time in most cases. So the big thing on planning is just making sure it's going to look its best for the market. We're going to price it right, have professional photos. And one thing I think is really important is having 3D tours and layouts, so that way someone can actually see what the layout of the home looks like. And we also find 1 in 6 home buyers, it buys a home sight unseen. So if we have someone from like California, we've had someone from Hawaii buy a house, or U.S. Virgin Islands moving here to Chattanooga because they love the mountains, they love the medium-sized city and all the things that we have here. But a lot of times they're not able to just book on a flight and go see a house. So the more information we can provide for them, the way they can kind of feel if that's going to be a good environment for them to purchase, having those tools is really helpful. So we use both a Zillow 3D tour as well as a Matterport, and I've been using Matterport since 2016. But those are the click-throughs where you can actually click through, you can take measurements. You can get the room sizes on that. If you have a VR headset, you can even use a VR headset, which is cool.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too when you use more of those tools. When you actually go to the property after you've seen the 3D tour, you kind of get a deja vu feeling. So it kind of makes you feel more attached to the house.
Yeah.
If you've already been able to kind of virtually see it in person versus just photos. So I think those are really helpful. And then, we talk a lot of people about where they're going to go for next is most important when they're selling, to see what their plan is, because we don't want to sell a house in 2 weeks and they have nowhere to go. So that's really important to figure that process out and make sure we're going to be on the right timetables for what their expectations are.
Wow. I mean, that's really a lot of stuff that could help the value of your home. Now, you were talking about what the tax, you want to be taxed on, or local market. So what's the usual difference? I don't know if I could quote you on this, but like if someone has a house that's valued tax-wise at $200,000, is that close to what the sale price is going to be? Or
it really depends on the property, and actually right now a lot of people are a little bit upset about the new tax assessment.
I was about to say
that's a hot topic.
It's a hot topic. Yeah. I know my home is, my wife and I were discussing it. It was like, she was just standing there. She's going like, how? They just want more tax money. Yeah,
definitely. Well, and we'll see what actually comes out from the budget, because what they're saying is the tax appraisal has gone up. The city and counties have a budget for how much taxes they're going to assess. So they might actually change the rate for what they're going to charge based on the assessment. So for example, if you're typically, your tax is about 1% of your property value. For most people, if they live in the city and they have a $400,000 house, they're expected around $4,000. If their tax assessment jumped to $8,000, it doesn't always mean that may double, because what can happen with policies is they could reduce the amount of taxes per assessment. So maybe instead of going to $8,000, it might go to $6,000. We'll have to see what happens, because unfortunately they should actually say, here's what your tax bill would be. Instead, they just say, here's what your assessment, what we think your property is worth. There are ways to challenge that. I've heard some people that are successful and some people are not. So if your house is for sure not worth what the tax assessor is saying, there are ways to challenge that with an appraisal or a broker price opinion. Broker price opinion is something we can prepare and submit. An appraiser would be a formal, hiring an appraisal, do a formal appraisal. But even then, a homeowner could also submit comparable sales to say, look, my neighbor's house just sold for $50,000 less than what you're saying mine's worth. There's no way it's worth this. And then you can challenge that value. And also when we're talking about building costs are a lot higher. So in some cases, you might need to insure your property worth a lot more to rebuild than it's actually worth in some cases.
Wow.
So like, I don't know how much square footage is your house, for example.
I think it's around 3,800.
3,800. So probably when it was built, you could probably build that for 380,000. Now it might cost 620,000 to build, rebuild if you were building that exact same property right over. So even though it might, let's just say it's worth 500, you might have to insure it for 620 if you had to rebuild it.
Yeah, I'm kind of scared because you're like really guessing close to a lot of things, and you're making me uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah.
It's almost like you know what you're doing.
Right. Well, we have builders that can build from ground up, and some of them, it depends on the kind of options, but usually between $150 to $200 a square foot. If it's a luxury or custom design, it's going to be more on that. But generally, that's kind of what makes sense on talking with an insurance agent as well about what it would cost to rebuild your home, because they have adjusters that are going to give those values. But sometimes it's hard when we have maybe we have an engineer type person that says, if I were going to rebuild my house, it would cost this much and it should be worth that. That's not always the way the market goes. There's some houses that are historic homes that sell more than new construction, and there's some that sell less, and when it's not just based on the rebuild value, it's based on the market value. But yeah, those are a couple things that's really important to look at, is what the new tax assessed value is, what the insured value, and knowing that those are going to be different than what actual home buyer is willing to pay for your house.
Oh, wow. I know this is an insurance question, but I've been pounded this in my head many times.
Yeah.
How often should you have your house reevaluated for your insurance?
Right. It's probably a good thing to talk, annually with your insurance agent on that to see what your premium is, and because premiums are rising a lot in a lot of parts of the country for insurance. So looking at both your coverage and your premium, your deductibles, what you're going to have to pay if there's a major incident. And some people are comfortable having a low deductible. Others are comfortable having a higher deductible. So like if your house got destroyed, what your deductible is going to be might be between like $1,000 and $10,000. And if you pick a $10,000 deductible, you might have a lower annual cost.
Yeah.
But it's really important to build that right policy for somebody, as well as update their insurance if they've had any major improvements, like a new roof or an addition, or somebody put in a pool or solar panels or whatever it is that's a major change that they might want to have coverage on their policy for. And when we're shopping for buying a house, looking at those taxes and insurance are really important to the long-term affordability of a house, because you can have like my in-laws bought a very nice house that was over $800,000, and I think they pay lower taxes than we do because it's in the country. It's lower. It doesn't have city taxes. And their insurance is probably a lot higher than ours, but some of those things balance out. And so when we're looking, it's not just what someone's qualified for on a mortgage, but also looking at their taxes and insurance, or, I try to be careful around flood insurance for a lot of people. I ask if that's something that they are sensitive to, because sometimes we have some properties here that's on a creek or a river or something like that, flood insurance can be another high cost that it can add like $1,000 to $2,000 per year of cost. So it's some.
Wow.
And sometimes we've had some properties where one's across the street from the other one, one's in a flood zone, one's not, because it's right next to a creek or drainage area or something like that. So it's important to check on those before we ever make an offer on a property. We check what the annual taxes are and if it's in a flood zone or not. It's always important, basic things to look for.
Now, you have years and years of knowledge. I have to say, I'm walking out of this podcast even more impressed by you, Corey.
Sure.
If you were to give advice to someone who's looking to get into selling real estate,
yeah,
what kind of advice would you? I know you're going to be kind of partial to your own broker.
Yeah.
But what are things that they would have to absolutely love to become a real estate agent?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we were talking about earlier before the meeting is I think it's really important to know what personality type somebody is. And then also how to work with others of different personality types. So, for example, if someone's detail oriented, or they're very results driven, or they're social butterfly, or they're very steady, patient person, sometimes they have to figure out what the best way to market and network or generate leads or work with people are. Because if you put someone that is a detail person and try to tell them that they're going to make 100 calls a day, they're going to freak out.
Yeah.
Sometimes the social butterfly is going to feel the same way. The social butterfly is going to want to go to networking events and meet people face to face and build connections that way, or host special events for clients and things like that. So I think it's important to work hard in the strengths that you have. And the most important thing I feel in real estate is to be learning based. Is there is so much that if we don't know, we can be a big detriment to our clients. So, for example, we talked with another agent before that was seasoned but not in investment, and she advised her client to just talk with an accountant about reinvesting. And what they probably needed to do is also pull in a 1031 intermediary. And that's when you're selling an investment property. If you want to reinvest, there are certain situations where you can defer your taxes. And, it was a learning experience for them. It was a potential referral to me. They were selling a property in Knoxville and buying in Chattanooga. But I got to teach both the investor and the agent a little bit about 1031 exchanges and how you can defer taxes, which sometimes if you're making like $100,000 in profit on a investment property, you potentially could be taxed up to $20,000. And
Oh, wow.
so that might be a big impact to somebody. If they're making $1 million in profit, then $200,000 plus might be a really painful bill to pay. So it's important to know what someone's goals are. And our thing is to be the connection for the resources. So we got to be the resource for those resources. If somebody's looking for, an attorney, a CPA, a 1031 intermediary, they're looking for a contractor, a lot of times we need to help guide them and give them resources. It's still kind of their job to do some due diligence themselves. Like that investor, it was really on him for not researching that information. But as part of the sale, we actually have to build those things in our contracts. If we're selling an investment property and someone wants to do a 1031 exchange, it actually has to be in the purchase agreement that it's disclosed to the buyer that we're doing that. And before it ever goes to the title company has to know. So there's a lot of those pieces and moving parts that we can't know everything, but we need to be very knowledgeable and a resource for the resource. So
You have to wear so many hats.
yeah, there's a lot of hats to wear. And sometimes it's a counselor, sometimes it's an educator, sometimes it's a marketer.
Now, if somebody was trying to get in touch with you, want to buy a home, or actually get into real estate, how would they do it?
My cell is always the best way to reach me. It's 423-529-0696. But if they text me, it's always best because we get a lot of spam calls and it's really hard sometimes.
Yeah.
So if they text me and we can actually set up a call, I have a calendar link that it's available for anybody to link to book a call. I also have it can be a call, video call, or we also do some coaching for some other agents. They can book a coaching call. And, if they're interested in joining our brokerage, that's an option. But I'm also always looking for clients that are buying, selling, or investing in real estate, doing commercial real estate as well, which is a whole different thing. I think I studied engineering in college. I think real estate's very easy to learn, but there's a lot to learn. So it's there's another powerful quote I've heard before: is success is simple, not easy. So it's, I think that's a big thing in real estate. There's a high turnover. It's very feasible for people to learn, but there's a lot to it. There's a lot between finance, appraisal, taxes, marketing strategies, consistency, being all commission based. And there's a lot to learn. And I think to be a great agent, somebody needs to be willing to learn all those things,
Well, I want to thank you again for coming on Talk Truly. It's our first guest on Talk Truly. We're kicking it off, seeing you around town. When you're talking about network events, you sponsor some networking events. You're putting yourself out there. I totally respect that. But if you wanting to listen to more podcasting, just go to talktruly.com or go to trulyeffortlessevents.com. Look us up and you'll be able to find us. Again, my name is Ed, and this is Corey Ballou with Real Broker, and this is Talk Truly, and we'll just go ahead and finish it up right here. And have an amazing day. We'll talk to you next time.